Welcome to Monday through Friday Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega, and this is episode number 42. And I'm recording this on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020 at 4:41 p.m. Eastern Time. And all right, let's try to figure out why we keep doing something that's so wrong and so harmful to us. Because think about it, eating animals kills us. It's been killing us for decades. We have known, although many will deny it or object to it, but the science tells us, and our experience tells us really, that we don't need to eat meat and fish and dairy. So, what explains that? I mean, what explains how we have been so harmful to ourselves that it's afflicted us again with so many diseases, and now with this coronavirus, with this pandemic, that's separating us, that's impoverishing us, that's punishing us. You have to, what are we thinking? What are we thinking? We must have been thinking that, well, I'm eating meat and I'm well, and most of us are well. Most people don't get sick on meat, fish and dairy, which is true. Well, actually, I have a feeling that consuming those foods, especially coming from animals with saturated fat and the cholesterol and all, create a lot more damage than we realize. But before this pandemic, people were thinking to themselves, it can't be that bad. We can't be that bad, because look at how good our world is becoming. And it is. It has become really good in a lot of ways, where we have so much more than we need. We are so blessed. Now, there's some people, in the world, I guess around 750 million perhaps now, who are severely deprived of basic necessities, and that's another great sin of ours. But for the most of us, we're living great lives, and we're thinking of ourselves, we don't have to address the needs of those extreme poor. We don't need to stop farming animals in ways that abuses and tortures them so horrifically, because apparently God approves, because we're doing so well. All right, well, now I think we're beginning to understand that that God has been patient with us, that perhaps God has been trying to reach us and we just haven't been listening. So yeah, now I think, because of this pandemic, we are facing ourselves. We're seeing ourselves more as who we are, relative to virtue, relative to the good we do and the harm we do. And when we understand ourselves in that way, we improve. We've done this, throughout our lives, and that's why we reprimand our children. That's why we reprimand ourselves and our friends, and and we try to do it subtly and as kindly as possible, of course, because why not? But when we detect moral limitations, moral flaws, immoralities within us, we strive to change. And so I think maybe that's the stage at which we're at now. That before this pandemic, we we supposed that we were doing well enough morally. And now we understand very clearly that we were not and are not. And so that's now we're in the next step. You know, in a certain sense, the coronavirus may actually be a great blessing to us because, for example, climate change poses a much graver threat to humanity than this coronavirus, and perhaps than viruses in general. And without going through this moral reformation that we're undergoing now because of this pandemic, because we have to become better people in a lot of ways to get through it and prevent future ones. It's like this is training for the great battle that will be against climate change. This is a way of showing us that when we are faced with imminent loss, with imminent threat of loss of life, of loss of civilization, of lifestyle, we respond. And so now, you know, this will prepare us to then, you know, for many of us, look at climate change more squarely in the face, to you know, to not avoid or deny it anymore, to accept, yes, it is as threatening as scientists have been telling us for decades. I mean, just Google climate change, you know, and notice how many things that they predicted would be happening in 30, 40, 50 years are beginning to happen now. You know, like the melting of the permafrost, the tundra in Canada, Siberia, the northern latitudes. That's, you know, there's more greenhouse gases in those peat bogs than there is in the rest of the environment, the atmosphere. And you know, if that melts, as it is melting now, like decades before schedule, you know, that amplifies the extent of our problem beyond belief. So again, climate change is serious, and this coronavirus, let's look at it that way. Let's see coronavirus not as this evil agent that is afflicting us for no good reason. It's afflicting us for our benefit, for the future of our civilization. It's like, and you know, it's not a very harsh affliction relative to the 1918 pandemic or World War II or World War I, many of the other wars that we fought, you know, or the Great Depression. You know, civilization, people have been chastened much more severely than this coronavirus is chastening us now. But but let us see it in a new way. Let's see it as our wake-up call to become more virtuous. And well, let's get right to the politics, I guess. You know, one thing we have to do is get rid of Trump, because he incites hatred and violence and indifference and callousness and cruelty. And we can't afford that. So let's get him out of office. Let's get all the people like him out of office. And let's also reform the Democratic Party, because it was like the moderate faction of the Democratic Party that, for money's sake, because the economy was doing so well and so many Democrats were getting rich, has allowed our country to shift more and more toward this very harmful Republican ideology where it states, well, I can do whatever I want regardless of the consequences. So let's reform our politicians. This coronavirus is actually our means of doing that. It's no longer the the rich corporations who are calling the shots. It's this coronavirus. And if jobs have been lost, they will need to be created, and they will be created. If people need homes, they will not be evicted. You know, these kinds of circumstances, these kinds of remedies and initiatives that the rich and corporations haven't allowed to happen because they were preferring to just take that money from society for themselves rather than using it for the collective good, for the good of everyone, for the good of people who really need those resources. You know, now they don't have that power. Now it's the coronavirus who's calling the shots. And so that's another reason why, as harmful as this coronavirus is and has been and will be for some time, it really has been a blessing. It's allowing us to reform our politics. So, okay, so let's say you're convinced. Let's say you've been watching the show, or maybe this is the first time you're watching, whatever, hearing it on a podcast. And you understand that our treatment of farm animals is beyond cruel. It's just like, you know, it's worse than slavery, worse than the Holocaust. You understand that. You also understand that we only have one way to prevent future pandemics, and that's to stop farming animals. You know, and you also understand, of course, that you know, because apparently God is giving us more time to go vegan, because eventually I believe we'll go vegan, whether it happens in 10 years or 20 or sooner. We have been granted this reprieve from going vegan too quickly with this industry called cellular agriculture. And so, so I think you understand that we don't have to do away with meat and fish and dairy. We can eat as much lobster as we want at much, I mean, like the lobster, you know, that price point would be very easy to meet. You know, imagine eating as much lobster as you want, no cruelty at all, and with a zero risk of future pandemics coming from that lobster, that, you know, that food. So we're very fortunate. You know, 7 years ago, that's, you know, it's not a coincidence. You know, this is like, it was God who planned it that way. You know, and now God apparently wants us to fast track this industry, to not have us wait 10, 20 years for these products to get on into supermarkets and restaurants. You know, God is teaching us, well, I mean, science, God through science is teaching us that that we have to end farming, to the farming of animals, to be as safe as possible from pandemics. So so we're getting that, and you know that. You know, I've explained it, you know, again, this episode number 42. So then the next step is, or the next question is, so what do you do? I mean, have you been talking to your friends about this? Have you been learning about it? I mean, perhaps there's nothing, perhaps I've explained, you know, because really it's pretty basic. If you, yeah, I think I've explained it well enough where you don't even have to go to articles to confirm this. I think you understand that what I'm telling you is true about the cause of the pandemic and the only way we have of preventing future pandemics in the immediate future. So, so yeah, let's ask ourselves, why are we not talking about this more? I talk about it, you know, 5 days a week here on this TV show podcast. But I don't talk about it with people, the people with whom I talk occasionally. And so this is something that involves all of us. Why don't we start planning for a pandemic-free future? Why don't we start organizing for it? At least those of us who understand. And we can't really organize that much until many, many other people understand. But I suppose because to many it may feel like it's going up against the established order, the established society we have. That it's basically demanding a great change that will, shift a $1.3 trillion industry from factory farms to cellular agriculture facilities. And through the media and politicians, the owners of those kinds of industries, of the factory farm industry and other industries, they have ways of basically threatening us. For example, there are laws that that prohibit a person from going into a factory farm and photographing it or videotaping it. And these corporations will pay our politicians to tell people, well, no, we absolutely need these factory farms. We couldn't do without them. So perhaps that's what we're afraid of. Perhaps we're too busy doing other things. I don't know how. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. 10 and a half minutes. I shouldn't, because I'm feeling and I'm sounding kind of like a bit, pessimistic or just like, troubled by this, troubled by trying to figure out why we're not doing anything about it. Let me shift gears, because that, right, that was my emotions talking, but my intellect, my knowledge of this world of science tells me that this shift will happen. Factory farms will end much sooner than most people expect or realize, because they have to end, because we're not going to allow $1.3 trillion industry to endanger our future and kill so many people now, as this coronavirus is doing. We're not going to allow that. So my prediction is, while people are still too consumed with the change in routine, the change in mindset, the kinds of adjustments to our lives that this coronavirus is requiring, soon, whether it's this year or next year, we'll be going back to not wearing masks, to not having to distance. And as that happens, then, and this, again, a year or two perhaps, then people's minds will turn to, fine, let's not ever have this happen again. And so, yeah, I don't really have to do this show. I like to do it. Maybe I should do a different show. But basically, I'm pushing this along. Perhaps needlessly, perhaps not. No. The faster it happens. I mean, like, by my perspective, yeah, the faster it happens, the better. Not just for our sake, but for the sake of the 70 billion animals that lose their lives and are severely, abused every year in those factory farms. So, but, we have, again, this coronavirus is calling the shots now, and we will end factory farming because we have no other option. We will create a lot of new jobs, probably a lot of green jobs that address climate change, because again, we don't have another option. We will ensure that everyone has a home, because again, well, we don't have an option with that either. I mean, like, especially now. We will create a much better world for everyone. And that's something to feel good about. And when I was doing my coronavirus series, I did 60 episodes of a series called Weekday Coronavirus-Driven Mind Stuff. And it was on White Plains Community Media. And I uploaded the episodes to YouTube. And I haven't gotten a podcast app on it yet. I may, I have to see what God wants. But during that coronavirus-driven mind stuff show, I went through that a lot. I basically kind of explained on many episodes, especially during the beginning, that for progressives, like I am, liberals who've been trying to protect the environment, who've trying to advance society for decades and have been like pushed back by these, selfish, mindless, science denying conservatives. For we progressives, this coronavirus is the cavalry. It's like, we don't even have to defeat Trump. We really don't. I think we will, because he really needs to just, he needs to be punished. He really does. And his supporters need to be punished. But what I'm saying is that this, for example, the CDC, Trump's CDC, just announced that the moratorium on evictions is being extended to December. Well, guess, is that a surprise? No. What are they? They're gonna like evict, millions of people. They go out on the street homeless, and just like, the numbers of coronavirus cases just like skyrocket. The Trump administration is no longer really calling the shots. Thank goodness. So yeah, all right. So I'm not sure where this episode came from, but I'm glad we were here for it. And I think what I'd like to do, again, have 5 minutes left, is just focus on this much more wonderful world that we'll be creating, as we end this pandemic. I want to address, actually, because like this pandemic is giving progressives, people who want better government, a better world, a lot of power, and we need to use that power wisely. So let's shift back to the politics and understand that the reason we're in this coronavirus to begin with, the reason we're not tackling climate change, is because of the money in politics. Corporations, rich people use their money to buy our politicians, so the politicians are enacting their will rather than ours. And the only way we're going to change that, the only way we're going to do what needs to be done, is to get money out of politics. So, if you have, $1, that's like, one person, I forget. There's basically, with money in politics, corporations have bribed our politicians to considering them people, and as people, they can make political contributions. And no, they're not people, and even people shouldn't be allowed to. In other words, like, publicly financed campaigns is the way to go, because that way nobody has monetary influence on our politics. The only influence that, in that case, they can have is the influence of the ideas. If they have good ideas, yeah, there's a forum for them. But they can't push bad ideas with a lot of money and just get them through because of that. So, so yeah, that's one of the powerful mechanisms we will now be moving into to create this much better world. Without the money in politics, our democracy can thrive. Our democracy can work the way a democracy is intended to work. And we, the people, of the people, by the people. And yeah, and so, I mean, and these are just the logistics of it. So, you know, again, we'll from a spiritual perspective, we'll end the farming of animals. We'll acknowledge to ourselves not only that it will threaten, it has been threatening our future, our present. It will threaten our future, you know, and we'll also acknowledge how cruel we've been. And as we do that, our conscience will be amplified. You know, will be awoken. You know, will be greatly strengthened. And you know, this I'm sure happened as we ended slavery. So we'll get in touch with our virtue. You know, much more powerful conscience and virtue, and that will propel us to do many, many more great things. So yeah, I like this optimistic message, and I believe I should try to express it, you know, as much as possible. For whatever reason, it's a difficult message for me. I guess I'm too focused on addressing the problem and not nearly enough on understanding that the problem will be resolved, because it has to be, and that we are creating a much better world. All right, I've got under a minute, so watch this every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon, and if you live in some of the surrounding towns like Scarsdale and Ardsley and Irvington and Tarrytown, Greenberg, and you get Verizon 45, and you know, you can see that there also. And the episodes are on YouTube in video and on iTunes and Spotify as audio podcasts. And all right, so think about this, talk about this, you know, talk about that's what we need to do. We're in the stage where the more we talk about it, the better. Okay, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.